The galaxy had forgotten the sound of human voices. It had been almost 100 years since the last human fleet vanished beyond the stars. Their colonies were gone, their cities silent, their banners burned in alien skies. The Galactic Council called it the cleansing of Earthkind. To them it was history to humanity. It was the beginning of a long silence across the galaxy. The other races spoke of humans as a joke, stories told in bars and classrooms, warnings told to children. Do not be like the humans, they said. They were loud, proud, and foolish every cycle. The Council would celebrate the anniversary of Earth's fall. They played recordings of the final human transmission, a desperate voice shouting, "We will return," before the signal cut to static. To the galaxy it was comedy. To Earth, it was a promise, but Earth had not died. It had gone quiet, cold, and clever. Deep under the ashes of old cities, survivors built hidden shelters. Beneath mountains and oceans, engineers worked in secret, no longer trying to outnumber the galaxy, only to outthink it. They called themselves the Second Dawn. They had no flags, no songs, no parades, only silence, steel, and purpose. In the void above the solar system, alien merchants often passed near the dark blue planet. They laughed when they saw its quiet surface. Nothing lives there anymore, they said. The humans are gone. But sometimes, their scanners would flicker, strange readings, shadows, signals that vanished too fast to trace. They ignored them, because the galaxy had stopped believing in humans. In the bright heart of the Galactic Council, the Emperor's court was in session. Noble species from 100 worlds gathered under crystal ceilings. There, humanity was the topic of the day again. A historian was presenting a new play called The Fall of Earth. It was meant to be entertaining. Actors dressed as humans danced foolishly across the stage. The audience laughed when the pretend humans shouted, "You'll regret this." Before falling dramatically, even the Emperor smiled. Such a primitive species, he said. They were too emotional for the stars, but far away, on a cold planet covered in storm clouds, a signal pulsed beneath the surface. It was faint, buried under layers of static. An old transmission, human code, repeating endlessly, "Blackwing Protocol. Stand by." In a secret chamber deep below the ruins of an ancient city, lights flickered to life. Dust fell from metal consoles as power returned for the first time in decades. A voice broke the silence, mechanical, calm, and human. Command authorization recognized. Fleet maintenance complete, awaiting command. Meanwhile, on the galactic news networks, the ridicule continued. Reporters mocked Earth's silence. They compared the fall of humanity to a cautionary tale. "Too proud, too emotional, too wild," said one anchor. A hollow screen behind her showed the Earth as a blue dot. Labeled primitive world and restricted zone, every word reached human ears. Because hidden among the alien networks were Earth's invisible watchers. Human hackers who had never stopped listening. They recorded every insult, every lie, every arrogant laugh. In an old bunker near the Arctic Circle, a small group of humans watched the broadcast in silence. Their leader, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, smiled faintly. "They still think we're gone," she whispered. A young technician turned to her. "Should we respond?" "Not yet," she said. "Let them laugh a little longer." Far beyond Earth, in the shadows of Jupiter's orbit, something massive slept. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't a station. It was a fleet, thousands of black, silent ships hidden behind cloaking fields. Their hulls were cold, their engines dormant. They had waited for a century, forgotten even by those who built them. And yet they waited faithfully. Each ship carried a single word engraved on its side: humanity. Back in the galactic capital, the Emperor hosted a grand broadcast. "The galaxy stands united," he declared proudly. "The age of chaos is over." The crowd roared in approval. But as the celebration continued, something strange happened. Every screen in the chamber flickered. Every hollow feed went dark for 3 seconds. Then a single image appeared, a human eye staring back, and a voice whispered through the static. "We remember." Panic rippled through the room. "Trace that signal." The guard shouted, but no one could find its source, because it came from everywhere and nowhere across the galaxy. Ships and stations reported strange anomalies. Old satellites reactivated, frequencies shifted. Hidden data packets carried the same haunting message: "We remember." To most, it was just a ghost in the system. But to those who understood human code, it meant only one thing: a signal had been sent. A call had been answered, Back on Earth, the sky crackled with lightning as power grids surged. Ancient machines roared to life beneath the crust. And deep in orbit, invisible to all scanners, a fleet began to wake. One by one, the ships powered on. Engines flared, lights flickered. Shadows moved in the silence of the void. A single voice whispered through the command channels. "Black Wing Fleet, prepare for emergence." The stars above Earth shimmered faintly. And for the first time in 100 years, the galaxy felt something it had forgotten. A chill. A quiet sense that something ancient, something powerful was watching again. And in that silence, the laughter finally stopped. For 100 years, the stars had been quiet. No human fleet, no human voice, nothing but static and rumor. The galaxy had grown comfortable in its arrogance. They thought Earth had died, buried under the dust of its own pride. But beneath the cold blue oceans, inside hollow mountains and hidden moons, humanity had been building in the frozen ruins of what was once Alaska. Deep under layers of ice, a massive hangar came alive. Lights blinked on, machines stirred, and giant steel doors groaned open after a century of sleep. Inside, the walls were carved with the words, "Second Dawn Command." Hundreds of technicians, the descendants of those who survived the First War, moved quickly, their faces lit by the glow of old computers now roaring back to life. A young officer named Mara stood before the central console, her breath fogging the glass. "Power levels stable," she whispered. "Blackwing systems are coming online." Her commander, an older man with tired eyes, nodded slowly. "Then the time has come," he said. "Send the signal." Her fingers trembled as she pressed the old button. A deep hum filled the air, a vibration that seemed to echo through the bones of the planet itself. Far above, the hidden satellites orbiting Earth reactivated one by one. Each one sent out a silent burst of encrypted data. In the shadow of Jupiter, the sleeping ships stirred. Power surged through their veins, lights blinking on like stars being born one by one. The voices of long-dormant AIs spoke across the void. System check complete. Weapons online, awaiting orders. The Blackwing fleet had awakened. Across the solar system, the old Terran communication relays buzzed with energy. Ancient codes and forgotten encryption keys came alive again. Earth's network, once broken and silent, now pulsed with organized precision. Everything was in motion, and no one in the galaxy knew. But change never hides for long in the far reaches of space. A small alien scout ship passed near Neptune's orbit. Its crew of 3 were bored, running routine patrols for the Galactic Council. Then their radar screens flickered. "Strange readings ahead," said the pilot. "Large mass signatures, but no visual." The commander frowned. "Probably debris." But as they drifted closer, the stars themselves seemed to vanish. The crew froze, and it wasn't debris, it was something enormous. A dark shape the size of a mountain moving without light. The sensors tried to lock on, but failed. Then a faint glimmer of red light pulsed from the void, and their radios filled with a soft human voice. "This sector is restricted. Turn back." Before they could respond, the signal cut, and the ship's systems shut down. Only one message made it back to the Council. A single fragment of transmission. "They're still here, back on Earth." Storms gathered over the oceans. Lightning flashed in strange patterns, matching the rhythm of the reawakening fleet all over the world. People looked to the sky without knowing why. They could feel it. Something old, something powerful, something human. In underground cities, families told stories of the First Fleet, of heroes who vanished among the stars now. The children listened wide-eyed as the stories came alive again. In the capital of the Galactic Empire, the Emperor's advisors brought reports. "Disturbances in the Sol system," one said. "Energy signatures unknown." The Emperor waved a hand dismissively. "Ghost stories," he said. "The humans are gone." But the advisor looked uneasy. "Perhaps, sire, we should verify." The Emperor laughed. "If they were alive, they would have crawled back by now." But in the deep void beyond Saturn, the human fleet was already forming. Dozens of ships glided into position. Their hulls blacker than space, they carried no insignias. No flags, only purpose inside the lead ship. Admiral Zara stood before a massive observation window. Her uniform was plain, her eyes sharp and calm. She had trained her entire life for this moment. "The Council thinks we are dead," she said softly. Let them keep thinking that. Behind her, the crew of the Oblivion's wing, humanity's first stealth dreadnought, waited in silence. "What are your orders, Admiral?" a voice asked. Zara smiled faintly, her reflection shimmering in the glass. "Let the galaxy sleep a little longer," she said. "Then we'll wake them up." In the distance, hundreds of cloaked ships formed a slow rotation. They drifted like shadows between the stars, invisible to scanners. Each one carried weapons no alien had ever seen. Technology developed in secret and tested in silence. Their cores hummed with Terran energy. Ancient, powerful, precise, and at their heart. Every AI spoke the same phrase as they came online. Human command, standing by, the storm was building. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the silence of Earth had never meant surrender. It had meant preparation. Back on the planet's surface, Mara looked up through the hangar skylight. Through the storm clouds, faint red streaks of light were visible. "They'll see us soon," she whispered. Her commander nodded. "Good," he said quietly. "They've forgotten who we are. It's time to remind them." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the sky for a brief moment. And above the clouds, something vast moved, unseen, patient, unstoppable. The Blackwing fleet was ready. The storm had begun to gather, and when it finally broke, the galaxy would never laugh at humanity again. In the shining capital of the Galactic Empire, the halls of power glittered with gold and arrogance high above the clouds. The Emperor's palace floated like a sun-crowned fortress, its towers glowing with energy stolen from 1,000 conquered worlds. Every corridor echoed with the laughter of nobles and commanders, boasting of victories, drinking to the end of fear. To them, humanity was a myth, a primitive story told by soldiers to frighten recruits. When the first strange reports arrived from the Sol system, no one cared. An aide read the message aloud in a bored tone. Unidentified transmissions detected near Earth. The Emperor leaned back on his throne, a smile curling his lips. "Ghosts," he said. "The humans love to play with radio noise," the court laughed. The sound of silken mockery filling the air, but far from their laughter. Deep space sensors began to tremble with impossible readings. At first it was small, a pulse, a signal, a flicker. Then it grew. Energy levels rising beyond anything on record. Fleet Command scrambled to recalibrate their instruments. A technician whispered, "Sir, it's coming from the human system." The Admiral frowned. "That system is dead." "Then the dead are moving," the technician replied. Across the galaxy, long-range probes caught glimpses of something enormous. Fast shadows drifting through the dark between planets, silent and coordinated. No one could trace their origin, but the pattern was unmistakable. A formation, an organized fleet, and at the center of every reading was that same echoing code. Blackwing protocol active. The Emperor ordered a council of war. Hundreds of generals filled the chamber, their armor polished, their pride shining brighter than reason. "Humans do not possess stealth technology," one said. "These readings must be false. Perhaps pirates," another suggested. But the Emperor silenced them with a gesture. "Then we shall prove it false," he said coldly. "Send the 7th Armada." The 7th Armada, the pride of the Empire, stretched across the void like a chain of suns. 2,000 ships armed with weapons that could crack planets. They moved toward the solar system with confidence and contempt. Admiral Voran, commanding the fleet, recorded his speech for the galactic broadcast. "By order of His Majesty, we shall extinguish the last human ghosts," he declared. Billions watched as his words filled every screen. The galaxy cheered, not knowing they were witnessing the beginning of their own legend. When the fleet reached the edge of the system, the stars felt different. The void was heavy, thick, alive. "Nothing on scanners," Voran muttered. "Activate full sweep." The radar screens pulsed, empty, then full, then empty again. He scowled. "Their planet still spins." Nothing more, but his communications officer hesitated. "Sir, we're picking up reflections, heat signatures, hundreds of them." "Where?" "Everywhere." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the stars themselves began to shift. It was not the stars, and it was the ships, the Blackwing fleet. Rising from the darkness like predators from deep water, cloaks peeled away in silence, revealing hulls of obsidian steel and glowing crimson lines. Each ship larger than the last, each one bearing the ancient Terran emblem, the eagle. The circle, the flame. A sound filled the comms. Not static, not music. A voice, calm and human. "Admiral Zara of the Terran Blackwing to Galactic Command. Identification confirmed. You are trespassing in Sol space." The bridge of the Imperial flagship fell silent. Every alien officer froze. Staring at the transmission, the admiral whispered, "Impossible." The voice spoke again. "We warned you once a century ago, do not return." Then the signal ended. Vorin laughed nervously, trying to hide his fear. "Empty threats from ghosts," he said. "Open fire." Thousands of plasma beams burst forward, cutting through the dark, but every shot vanished before impact. The human fleet shimmered, then was gone. Disappeared completely. Seconds later, the Imperial fleet sensors screamed. The Blackwing had reappeared. Behind them, they moved with impossible speed, their weapons silent until the first strike. A pulse of blue light crossed the void, slicing an entire cruiser in half. Then another, then 10 more. No warnings, no mercy, just precision. Panic spread through the alien ranks. "They're everywhere," someone shouted. "They're inside our targeting systems," cried another. The battle lasted 3 minutes. Then the void was quiet again from his palace. The Emperor watched the live feed go dark. He stood slowly, his reflection pale in the golden floor. "What happened?" he demanded. A trembling messenger whispered, "The humans, my lord. They were never gone." Across the galaxy, news spread faster than light. The broadcast that once mocked Earth now played the same haunting image. The sky above Earth opening, Blackwing ships emerging like shadows from legend, and a single message transmitted on every frequency. "We remember. The laughter that once filled the galaxy was gone. In its place came silence and respect and fear reborn. Because the galaxy had learned something terrible and beautiful, that humanity's silence had not been defeat. It had been preparation, and somewhere beyond the stars." Admiral Zara whispered to her crew. "Let them run," she said, "for the storm has only begun." The stars burned brighter that night, as if the universe itself was watching. Across the Sol system, every human ship hummed with life, engines glowing like the hearts of sleeping giants. From Mercury to Pluto, cloaked stations powered up, ancient arrays awakening after a century of silence. The command channels came alive with voices, calm, steady, human. Fleet synchronization complete, weapons calibrated. "Admiral, awaiting your word." On the bridge of the Oblivion's wing, Admiral Zara stood tall, her reflection glimmering in the holographic display. All around her, officers worked with quiet purpose, every motion rehearsed, every gesture sharp. This was no ordinary battle. It was justice delayed, it was silence breaking. "Admiral," said her lieutenant, "the Imperial fleet is retreating to regroup." Zara smiled faintly. "Good," she said. "Let them think they still have time." She turned toward the massive viewport, watching as the enemy ships drifted like silver dots against the black sea of space. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "Open the sky." And with that command, the solar system itself changed. From Earth's surface, people looked upward and gasped. The night cracked open like glass. Hundreds of cloaked ships shimmered into view, peeling back their stealth layers in perfect formation. Each one enormous, black as shadow, their hulls covered in crimson lines pulsing like veins of fire. For the first time in generations, the stars above Earth were filled not with fear but with humanity's power. The Galactic Council's observers watched in disbelief. "What are those things?" one shouted. The broadcast filled the galactic networks in seconds. Millions of species watching the impossible unfold. The announcer's voice trembled. "The humans. They're back, on the Imperial flagship." Admiral Vorin stared in horror as the readings surged. "Impossible," he whispered. "Their energy output. It's off the charts." Before he could react, the Blackwing fleet moved. Not like ordinary ships, but like living things, they drifted and vanished, reappearing behind the enemy lines in perfect silence. Then came the first strike. The void exploded with light. Beams of energy cut through the darkness, moving faster than sound. Alien cruisers disintegrated instantly, their debris scattering like dust across the void. Human dreadnoughts opened fire in unison. Every volley was a statement, every shot a declaration. Humanity had returned. The Imperial fleet tried to respond, firing plasma cannons and kinetic missiles, but their weapons barely scratched the human shields. Zara's voice echoed through the command channel. "Calm as ever. Target engines only," she said. "Leave survivors." The crew obeyed, and soon the blackness of space was filled with drifting, powerless alien ships, their lights fading. On Earth, the people watched the battle unfold on every screen. No one cheered, no one shouted. They simply watched in awe, tears in their eyes. Generations of fear and silence melted away into pride. The old veterans who once fought the First War whispered. They kept the promise. At the edge of the battlefield, one of the Imperial ships sent out a desperate message. To all Council forces, the humans. They never died. They were waiting. The transmission spread across the galaxy. Every empire, every ruler, every species that once mocked Earth now listened in silence. The Blackwing fleet began to regroup, their formation like a halo around Earth. Zara looked at the holographic map. Countless enemy signals blinking red. Send this transmission to all channels, she said. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of 100 years of silence. To the Galactic Council, to the Empire, and to every world that forgot, humanity kneels to no one. You tried to erase us, but we are written into the stars. We do not seek conquest, only remembrance. Her words echoed across light years, in royal chambers, in slums, in warships. In schools, everyone heard them for the first time. The galaxy understood that fear could not destroy humanity. It only made them stronger. The storm passed, leaving wreckage glittering like diamonds against the black void. The Imperial fleet was gone, shattered and humiliated. But humanity didn't celebrate. They simply stood in the silence they had earned. For them, this was not revenge, it was balance. As the battle ended, the fleet drifted into position around Earth from below. The planet's night sky shimmered with red lights. Children pointed upward, their eyes wide with wonder. The sky had opened, and humanity's shadow filled it once more. In distant corners of the galaxy, alien historians would later call it the Night of Fire. Others called it the Second Dawn, but on Earth they had another name for it. They called it the day the sky remembered us. The stars had fallen quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence now. It wasn't the silence of fear or loss or defeat. It was the silence that came when even the universe paused to listen. The great empires that once mocked humanity were now holding their breath, because after the storm there was only one truth left. The humans had returned. In the ruins of the Imperial fleet, broken ships drifted through the void like forgotten ghosts. Rescue crews found survivors staring at the stars, whispering the same word again and again. Humans. They spoke it not with hate or mockery anymore, but with awe, because they had seen the impossible, a species that refused to die. Admiral Zara stood at the command deck of the Oblivion's wing, looking out into the endless dark. The lights of the Blackwing fleet shimmered in formation, glowing faint red against the void. Around her, the crew moved quietly. They were not celebrating. They were remembering. Zara closed her eyes for a moment and whispered, "We kept our promise." On Earth, the world below had changed overnight. Screens across every city showed the images of the fleet emerging from the clouds. Children pointed upward, their parents whispering stories of the First War. For generations, humanity had hidden, waiting, preparing, and now their children were watching them rise again. In the Galactic Council chambers, panic had turned to disbelief and disbelief to silence. The Emperor's throne sat empty. His fleets were gone, his pride shattered. Council members argued, shouted, and accused each other of lies. How could they return? One shouted, they were supposed to be extinct. Another cried. An older member simply bowed his head. They were never extinct, he said softly. They were waiting. Word spread faster than any weapon. Across distant colonies, across empires and neutral worlds, people began to speak differently of humans. They were no longer the joke of the galaxy. They were the mystery, the legend, the storm that came without warning. Songs were written, statues built, stories told around fires in alien tongues. The galaxy began to remember, and deep within the archives of a distant world, an old historian recorded the event. He wrote, "They were not the strongest, not the oldest, not the most advanced, but they were the ones who endured. When they were mocked, they smiled. When they were beaten, they waited. And when they rose, the stars themselves trembled." On the bridge of the Oblivion's wing, the communication officer turned to Zara. "Admiral," he said, "we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Some want peace, others want alliance." Zara nodded slowly. "Send them our terms," she said. "What are our terms, Admiral?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Respect," she said, "and memory." Outside, the fleet began to move, not toward war, but toward the unknown. Each ship spreading out into new territories. carrying the message that Earth had returned, not to conquer, but to remind the galaxy that silence can be power, that patience can be a weapon, and that humanity was never the story of extinction, but the story of survival. As they moved through the stars, new signals followed them, not warnings, not threats but greetings across countless worlds. Lights flickered in patterns of peace. The laughter that once mocked them had become laughter shared in friendship. Even the smallest races, once afraid to speak, began to raise their voices because humanity had done something no empire ever could. They turned fear into courage, and loneliness into unity. Years later, alien children would learn about Earth not as a cautionary tale, but as a legend teachers would tell them. When the humans fell, they did not break. They waited, they learned, and when the sky opened, they returned with light. And far in the future, when the stars began to shift again, and new dangers appeared in the dark, every fleet, every world, every species remembered that night, the night the sky opened. Because in the memory of the galaxy, one truth remained unshakable: never underestimate the humans. They were the storm that learned to smile, the silence that learned to roar, the ashes that learned to shine again. And even after 1,000 years, when the stars themselves began to fade, the galaxy would still whisper the same words in every language. They mocked humanity once, they never did again.